Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. This episode, I'll be discussing Omar slamming GOP attempt to remove her from House Foreign Affairs Committee as whitewashing. PBS NewsHour reports that the DOJ has dropped its discrimination lawsuit against Yale University that had alleged the university was illegally discriminating against Asian American and white applicants. San Francisco officials plan to sue their own Board of Education to push the district to reopen schools more quickly. And finally, why does Biden hate women? Politico breaks ugly story about Biden administration denying maternal leave to a woman on transition team. So let's get started. Rep. Ilhan Omar on Wednesday slammed the push by a handful of GOP lawmakers to remove her from the House Foreign Affairs Committee as a racist and misogynistic attempt to draw false equivalency with the controversy surrounding the first-term rep, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Republicans will do anything to distract from the fact that they have not only allowed but elevated members of their own caucus who encourage violence. It's time to stop whitewashing the actions of violent conspiracy theorists who pose a direct and immediate threat to their fellow members of Congress and our most fundamental democratic processes, Omar said in a statement. Democrats have set up a Thursday vote to strip Greene of her committee assignments for promoting violent conspiracy theories. On Tuesday, a group of House Republicans led by Brian Babin filed an amendment to Democrats' resolution to strip Greene of her seats on the House Education and Labor and Budget committees that would instead replace Greene's name with Omar's. Omar sits on the Education and Labor committees, so the GOP amendment would take her off that panel as well as the Foreign Affairs Committee. Omar, one of the first Muslim women elected to Congress and frequent target of the right, blasted the GOP amendment as a desperate smear rooted in racism, misogyny, and Islamophobia. And it's not, actually. So the argument being made by the GOP is this. So if you want to hold Marjorie Taylor Greene for statements made before she was in Congress, right? So if you want to hold the statements made made as she was a private citizen, if you want to currently hold her accountable for statements she made before she was even elected into office, then we should hold you equally accountable for statements that you had made while you were in office. Representative Omar, it seems only fair. You've made anti-Semitic comments or borderline anti-Semitic comments on the floor of the House, and you should get called out for it. You should get pulled from your committee assignments for being at least showing the appearance of anti-Semitism. How can you be on the Foreign Affairs Committee if you're anti-Semitic, or at least appear to be that way? You can't appear to be anti-Semitic and then be involved in foreign affairs. It would prove to be a conflict of interest if you wish to see the destruction of Israel, and while you're currently supposed to be defending Israel, or at least being involved in the decision-making process of things that would involve Israel. Omar pointed to Greene's past history of Islamophobic statements and attacks targeting her and other members of the so-called squad of progressive female House members elected in 2018. So again, she's referring to statements made before she was a congresswoman. So as a private citizen, and she is now being held accountable for those actions now that she's a congresswoman. I believe those are two different things. And my argument is the same thing for expulsion. She was voted into office by her constituency. All those videos, all those things were public knowledge. Her constituency voted her into office knowing all those things about her. So Ilhan Omar's statements, being the borderline anti-Semitic statements she made while on the floor of the House of Representatives, should have been condemned, but they were not condemned by the Democrats. They were only condemned by the Republicans. The House passed a resolution in March 2019 that condemned anti-Semitism and other forms of hate that did not specifically rebuke Omar, but it was taken up after she suggested that the U.S. supporters of Israel had allegiance to a foreign country. She said something about it's all about the Benjamins in power and their allegiance to a foreign country. House Democrats are moving forward with a Thursday vote on resolution to drop Greene from all committees. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy met with Greene on Tuesday night, and GOP Steering Committee, which determines members' committee assignments, met shortly afterward but didn't reach a resolution. I spoke to Leader McCarthy this morning, and it is clear that there is no alternative to holding a floor vote on the resolution to remove Rep. Greene from her committee assignments, said House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer said in a statement. Democrats are particularly outraged over Greene's past remarks, suggesting that school shootings, including those in Parkland, Florida, and Newton, Connecticut, were staged, as well as her apparent endorsements on social media of calls to execute prominent Democratic politicians such as Nancy Pelosi. So yeah, she is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But the only reason why she has drawn national attention, the only reason why she is now a household name, is because of politicians like these who are turning her into a household name. It's only because of outlets like CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, all these news organizations that are turning her into a household name by giving her 24-hour a day news coverage, calling her the boogeyman. It's the Trump effect. They're turning her into the new Trump. They need a boogeyman, and right now she's the boogeyman. And it's going to create unintended consequences. It's, in my opinion, CNN created QAnon, and they didn't create QAnon as in the QAnon didn't exist before CNN. It's CNN shined a light onto QAnon. It allowed QAnon to become more mainstream. It allowed more people to know about QAnon. I never heard of QAnon until it was something like Rachel Maddow or something on CNN. It was on TV and somebody was talking about QAnon, and then I had to basically look it up online. I was like, wow, this is crazy nonsense. But I could see how people would look into it and say, oh, a Democrat cabal involved in child sex trade. Oh, well, Jeffrey Epstein, and look at all these powerful Democrats who hang out around him and fly to his private island, and he was involved in child sex trafficking. So there is like kernels of truth, right? And you can see where people would jump down that rabbit hole and would start believing it, but they would never have heard of it if CNN hadn't been talking about it nonstop, hadn't been giving it air, haven't been giving that fire more oxygen. But all they do is give more oxygen to these fires. And then once they start burning out of control, they go, oh my goodness. And what? They're just the arsonist. They just create these wildfires. They create these frenzies, and then they wonder why crazy things happen afterwards. Because you do end up having people who are just unwell, or people who are susceptible to conspiracy theories, start believing in them and start doing crazy things, start doing inappropriate things, believing that they're doing something in the name of whatever conspiracy that they believe in, either on the left or the right, because there's conspiracy theories on both sides. Both have their mainstream conspiracy theories. But arguably, the QAnon was definitely not mainstream until CNN gave it life. There's mainstream conspiracy theories on the left, mainly Russiagate, and all these things that were going on that were just pushed nonstop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3-4 years straight. And that was a legitimate conspiracy theory. None of that was true. A lot of the facts weren't even facts. It was just false statements. Some blatant lies. FBI lawyers forging documents in order to get warrants out on Trump advisors. So you have your conspiracy theories on both sides, but you can't only have one boogeyman. You need to have one standard. Just have one consistent standard, friends. Your life will be so much easier. Justice Department drops discrimination lawsuit against Yale University. The Justice Department noted in its filing that it was voluntarily dismissing the action filed in October under the Trump administration. A judge must still sign off on it. Federal prosecutors had argued the university violated civil rights laws because it discriminates based on race and national origin in its undergraduate admission process, and that race is the determinative factor in hundreds of admissions decisions each year. Yale is gratified that the U.S. Justice Department has dropped its lawsuit challenging Yale's college's admissions practices, spokesman Karen Pert said. We are also pleased that the Justice Department has withdrawn its notice of violation of Title IX and its notice of noncompliance. In a statement, A Justice Department spokesperson said it was dropping the lawsuit in light of all available facts, circumstances, and legal developments, and notified Yale on Wednesday that it had also withdrawn its determination letter that the university discriminated based on race and national origin. But the spokesperson said that the department's underlying investigation aimed at ensuring Yale complies with all federal anti-discrimination laws remains ongoing. Biden's Justice Department has already worked to undo some of Trump's policies, including zero tolerance, the immigration policy that was responsible for family separations, blah, 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 blah. The Justice Department investigation was stemmed from a 2016 complaint against Yale, Brown, and Dartmouth. Also found that Yale used race as a factor in multiple steps of the admission process and that Yale racially balances its classes. The Supreme Court has ruled colleges and universities may consider race in admissions decisions, but has said it must be done in a narrowly tailored way to promote diversity and should be limited in time. Schools also bear the burden of showing why their consideration of race is appropriate. Yale has said its practices comply with decades of Supreme Court precedent and that it considers a multitude of factors and looks at the whole person when selecting whom to admit among the many thousands of highly qualified candidates. So that's pretty interesting. It seems like a pretty quick drop. I wonder if there's any ties between Yale University and Joe Biden or anybody within his administration. Definitely there should be some internal or external investigations there. Perhaps some members of the press can just do some digging. I'm sure some Wikipedia searches could look into that and find and see if somebody was possibly paid off, because there seems to be lots of conflicts of interest already arising in the Biden administration. So I wouldn't be surprised if there wouldn't, or if there would be a conflict of interest having stemmed from this issue. San Francisco sues its own school district to reopen classes. The city of San Francisco took a dramatic step Wednesday in its effort to get children back in public school classrooms, suing its own school district to try to force open the doors amid the coronavirus pandemic. The lawsuit was the first of its kind in California and possibly the country, as school systems come under increasing pressure from parents and politicians to end virtual learning. Teachers unions and many large school districts, including San Francisco, say they won't go back to school classrooms until they are vaccinated. City Attorney Dennis Herrera, with support from Mayor London Breed, said he sued the San Francisco Unified School District and Board of Education as a last resort to salvage what's left of the academic year. They say it's safe to reopen schools, and keeping them closed was hurting kids' well-being. So as teachers, they say trust the science, right? They trust the scientific process, trust this, trust that. And then once the scientists say it's safe, they say, well, it's not safe for me. I want the vaccination. Actually, don't open school. We're going to stick with virtual learning. Hypocrisy. Not a single San Francisco public school student has set foot in their classroom in 327 days, Herrera said at a news conference, calling it shameful and unlawful. More than 54,000 San Francisco school children are suffering. They are being turned into zombies by online school. Enough is enough. The lawsuit highlights the growing tension and infighting nationwide between politicians who insist it is safe to return to schools with proper safety precautions and teachers who are on the front lines and have not been able to get vaccinated yet. While the vast majorities of California schools have been closed since March, San Francisco schools have been allowed to reopen since September. Herrera noted that nearly 90% of schools in neighboring Marin County, including public schools, have resumed in-person instruction, and that 113 private and I can't pronounce that, schools in San Francisco are also open. I'm pretty sure parochial schools. The lawsuit says school administrators are violating a state requirement that districts adopt a clear plan to offer classroom-based instruction whenever possible during the pandemic. It seeks a court order to require schools to prepare to offer in-person instruction and file a detailed plan, Herrera said. School administrators called the lawsuit an embarrassment. This isn't helpful. We're all in this San Francisco pandemic bubble together, and turning on us is not helpful whatsoever. So this just goes to prove that these teachers unions have more power than the city government, than the state government. When the city and state says to open and the teachers unions say, no, we're not going to teach, then guess what happens? No teaching takes place. So we need to do something about these teachers unions. These teachers unions have too much power. When you have a civil union, right? So a civil service union. So teachers serve the public, just like police officers and firefighters. They really can't go on strike. But That's essentially what they're doing. They're saying, we will not show up in person. We're just going to teach by Zoom. They're essentially just striking on in person teaching, and they need to be held accountable. Some of their power and influence needs to be taken back by the people or taken back by the government. It needs to be just removed from them because when situations like this arise, now you see the consequences of those actions of you being soft on the unions. You allow them to just run rampant, allow them to do whatever they want to do. And then eventually there's going to be a time where they're just going to say no, and they're going to have the president, the power, and you're going to be forced to have to sue them. And it might take months before they end up going back to school. What happens if this gets drawn out for another year or another 2 years? Because COVID's not going away. Joe Biden has said it's going to take months to get COVID under control. It's going to take months to get vaccinated. And these new strains of COVID are more contagious and the vaccines are less effective against it. So guess what? There's probably going to be even more lockdowns. Are they going to shut down the schools again when the teachers say, well, we need the new vaccine? So now we're going to have to shut down the schools again. You can't give an inch because a mile will be taken at every opportunity. So before I get to the last episode, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share the video. It would really help the algorithm. And if you'd like to contribute to the show, please go to notsuchidiot.com/donate. You'll find links available where you can contribute to the show. And every little bit helps as we're trying to stay free from outside influence. Let's get to the last article from bizpackreview.com. I believe that the Politico article may have been behind a paywall, or I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. Biden admin refuses maternity leave to Trump admin employees. I got completely screwed. President Biden has pushed for parental leave concerning pregnancy for many years, so it came as a surprise when Biden's administration told Trump aides no when they requested maternity leave. It turns out they lost that benefit when Biden took office, and some are requesting the legality of it. The request for leave was originally approved by the Trump administration and then subsequently denied by Biden's. One of the aides affected by this, named Vanessa Ambrosini. She is the former deputy communications director at the Commerce Department. As her pregnancy progressed, she had everything in order and had been approved by the Commerce Department's Human Resources Office and 3 months of maternal leave. She gave birth a week before Christmas. She was shocked when she found out that the benefit had been rescinded when Biden took office. I got completely screwed. There were no caveats in the language saying anything about that if the administration turns, you get nothing. And of course, that happened, and so I got nothing. And Brosini was not alone either. It is typical for an incoming administration to honor those benefits, but the Biden transition did not do so. The Biden administration is refusing to address the issue. Instead, yet another anonymous source stated to Politico that political appointees do not enjoy the promise of federal employment past the end of the administration in which they choose to serve. The same source said it was the Trump administration's fault for delaying the transition, and that is why some of his aides are now suffering for it. Wow, that is some cold. That is cold. That is cold. So just remember, the Democrat Party is supposed to be the party of women's rights, maternity leave, and all this. And remember, she is paying the price. Maybe if Trump wasn't such a bad guy, she wouldn't be paying the price. No, maybe if Biden was a better person than Trump, right? So if you're going to play this game that Trump is the bad guy, then Biden needs to be the good guy. If Biden's the good guy, then he needs to be the better person and allow the maternal leave to take place. This is bananas. What's going on, friends? We understand that a few Trump appointees, including a handful currently on parental leave, submitted last-minute requests to remain on the government payroll, the source said. Because these requests were received so close to Inauguration Day, there was no way to implement an exception to the rule in a way that is fair to all outgoing appointees, including many who resign as expected without making requests for extraordinary benefits. I don't buy that, because if she had a baby in December, that means she got pregnant in March or April, or anywhere between February and April is when she got pregnant. So she made her pregnancy plans, throughout the course of the year, and you get all your ducks in line. So I don't buy that. Months in advance, this was probably set up, and then just Biden pulled the strings on it, or somebody in the administration pulled the strings on it and said, you know what, it's Trump's fault. Trump's the bad guy, not Biden. He also stated that appointees have been advised that they have options, including COBRA and the Affordable Care Act. Ha! What a butthole. In another instance, a couple who worked under Trump's Department of Homeland Security revealed that they were told just 2 weeks after their baby arrived prematurely on December 18th that there had been a mistake and that their leave would not be honored. That they appealed directly to the Biden administration, but were told no. It's one thing if you had a household, if you have one family member who works for the government, the father said, but we are both employed by the government, so we're losing both of our opportunities for healthcare and both of our incomes. So it's pretty scary to have a premature baby at home and not knowing if you're going to have an income or health insurance. The denial of maternity leave is not seen as a good luck for the incoming administration and does not portend the unity promoted by President Biden. Instead, moves like this one appear many conservatives to be petty and revengeful in nature. Kash Patel, who is a former chief of staff to the U.S. acting defense secretary in the Trump administration, vented on Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo that Biden's push for unity is garbage. He claims his employees at the Pentagon on parental leave were summarily fired as the new administration came in. Biden's coronavirus relief proposal includes paid leave and childcare subsidies, but that courtesy evidently won't be applied to outgoing Trump aides. That's bananas, friends. That is cold-blooded. That is cold-blooded. Well, maybe if Trump was nicer, they would have received the maternal leave that they were promised. Well, no, it has nothing to do with Trump. It has everything to do with Biden and Biden administration. If Biden and Biden officials are the ones who make that decision and they say no, then it is Biden's fault. I don't understand this fetishization of Donald Trump and making Donald Trump the boogeyman. Donald Trump is not making these decisions. Joe Biden is the individual making these decisions. Joe Biden's or whoever he appoints to power are the ones making these decisions. So the powers that be say these women, these families don't deserve healthcare. These families don't deserve pay. These families don't deserve what was promised to them by the federal government in exchange for their service. So what? You can't say you're champions for women. You're championing women's health by cutting off their maternal leave. That's ridiculous. That is the most cognitive dissonant statement one could possibly make, right? So perhaps what if she were going in for an abortion? I guess Joe Biden would be supportive of that, but that's not the case. She was having a baby, so she was going for maternal leave, and so Joe Biden cut off all her benefits because she supported Trump and did not support Joe Biden, I'm assuming. And so her punishment for that is her federal benefits that she should be receiving, that she should have received, what is apparently customary, is not being extended. So just remember that. It's the Democrats who are denying maternal leave to women. It's an attack on women on multiple fronts by the Joe Biden administration. They're going out of their way to attack women in families. And what? They're making them possibly go into great financial debt due to healthcare, great financial debt due to losing their jobs abruptly, as opposed to being having their leave honored like normal, basically saying, well, you can't even use your leave. You're going to lose your job on the spot. So, hey, everything that Joe Biden is running for, well, I'm not going to say everything, but a lot of the things he's been running for, he's been proven to have been a liar, and he's not being held accountable. People need to hold him accountable for this stuff. It is bananas. This bootlicking has just, it's one standard, friends. Trump isn't the boogeyman in this story like they tried to, whatever that anonymous source tried to make him out to be. Joe Biden is the boogeyman. Joe Biden is the one who, he greenlit this woman not being able to receive her maternal leave. He's the one who greenlit that couple to lose their jobs, to lose their paid leave, to lose their health care for the premature birth of their child. So he's the one who's greenlighting this stuff. It's not Donald Trump. And if this stuff that's being pushed is not unity, the stuff that's being pushed is extremely divisive, and it's going to just further polarize the country. And as more and more people see what's going on, more and more people are going to be unhappy. You already have a Thunderdome being constructed around the Capitol. They're talking about how thousands of National Guard troops being stationed at the Capitol. you're turning DC into a green zone, which is essentially what they call certain sections in Iraq. It's bananas. And they wonder why they have to resort to that sort of stuff. Because when you rule with an iron fist, the people will not tolerate it. You only govern with the consent of the people. If you govern as a tyrant, the people will revolt. The people will reject your authority because you will have none, because you will have lost all confidence. Once women catch wind that Joe Biden has denied maternal leave to a woman who was in the process of giving birth during the transition, what is that? Is that Joe Biden, Scranton Joe, or is that petty politician, piece of crap individual? No, it's a petty politician. That's exactly what that is. That is not Scranton Joe. That is not a man of the people. That is a piece of crap. And that's exactly what he's acting like. That is exactly what he's being by denying just basic healthcare, by denying the basically what was agreed upon, agreed upon between a worker and the federal government. If that was already agreed upon, and then the Biden administration came in and said, nope, we're cutting everything off, then that seems to be a Joe Biden decision, not a Trump decision. So that's going to be it today, friends. Unless the world starts burning, I'll be posting more videos up tomorrow. Until then, I'll see you all later. Have a good one. Bye.